Hi, we're out on our range today, and once again, we're talking about 3-day survival packs, or as they're called these days, 3-day emergency kits. And today, what we're specifically talking about is having a gun in your 3-day emergency kit, and even more specifically, our top 5 guns to put in the pack. Now, of course, it comes with a laundry list of caveats, disclaimers, and yabbits. Starting with, we're going to make 2 versions of today's presentation, a long version and a short version. You're watching the short version. So please don't send us a lot of hate mail with what we forgot to say. This is the short version. And what we're going to talk about today is a brief recap of the 5 rules of putting together a 3-day emergency kit, and a very brief discussion of what we mean by 3-day emergency pack and what that entails, and how those differ from Tiatuaki bug-out bags and wilderness survival bags. And then we'll get to our top 5. Now, if you want to make the short version the very short version, I invite you to fast forward to the point where you see Roy standing next to a sign that reads Top 5. Okay, for those of you who are still here, let's briefly recap the 5 rules of putting together a 3-day emergency kit. 1. Make it, build it, don't buy it. The stuff you buy is woefully inadequate in terms of quality and quantity, and it's not customized to you, your needs, your skills and abilities, your location, your environment. 2. Program compliance, and I know I sound like a broken record when I say that, but it is so important. Your pack has to be small, it has to be light, it has to be a pack that's easily carried. It has to be something that can fit in the trunk of your car or your locker at work. It only does you any good if you have it with you. Program compliance. Number 3 is this is a 3-day emergency kit, not a Tiatuaki bug-out bag, not a wilderness survival pack, although those 3 will have a lot of things in common. When we're talking about 3-day emergencies, we're talking about things like inclement weather where you have snowstorms, hurricanes, tornadoes, a fire, a flood, or you're having some kind of civil unrest like Black Lives Matter rallies and riots that get out of control and go from peaceful demonstration to a riot, and you have to get out of that area. Typically, when you have emergencies like this, a 3-day emergency kit is what we do because that's about the most anybody can carry is 3 days worth, and it generally takes about 3 days for the government to get the National Guard or other emergency services mobilized to get to you and help you. Now, I read a statistic, you know how statistics are, but I read a statistic that these days the average commute that a person has is 27 miles. So what we're talking about is you're at work, earthquake occurs, you're not dead, but you've got to get the 27 miles back to your house when no traffic is moving, power is out, there's no services, no running water, no electricity, and so forth, and it's you and your 3-day emergency kit. Or the opposite of that, you're going to have to stay at work where there's nothing there, and who knows, whatever problem may have even torn the roof off the building, for 3 days until some semblance of order is restored. There's things to think about, such as it's a terrible snowstorm, you're driving down the freeway, there's a wreck ahead of you, you're stuck on the freeway for a couple of hours waiting for it to be cleared, but in that couple of hours, another 2 feet of snow have fallen, and now you're stuck in your car on the freeway for about 3 days. These are the kind of things we're talking about. And although this can bring about a localized, temporary WROL situation, we're not talking about Tiatuaki. Okay, 4 is your local laws. People get upset when I say this, but there are things that some people will want to put in a pack that they think will be very helpful in some kind of emergency, but it's something that happens to be unlawful to possess in the jurisdiction in which you reside. Okay, I'm of the opinion that this emergency we're talking about, which could occur tomorrow, next week, 20 years from now, the chances of some unlawful thing getting you into some really bad legal trouble are greatly more than the chances of it being beneficial to you in an emergency. Now, the 5th thing is communications. That doesn't have a lot to do with what gun to put in your pack, and we expand on that much more so in other presentations, so we don't have to go into that. But those are the top 5 things. Now, as far as selecting a firearm to put in your pack, there's a few things that go into that. such as the gun has to be small enough and light enough to fit in your pack. It has to be legal in the jurisdiction in which you reside. It has to be economical enough that you can put it in the pack and then leave it there. Anything you put in the pack has to stay in the pack. Only take the firearm out when you're going to the range to train with it. And so maybe a $1,500 gun in your pack that you never get any use out of, that might not be what a lot of people want to do. The firearm also has to be something that fits your needs, your capabilities, and it really has to fit what you think you're going to be doing. Now, when we say 3-day emergency kit, there are certain people that cannot separate that from wilderness survival, and they immediately start thinking about subsistence hunting. I'm of the opinion that subsistence hunting in a 3-day emergency situation is something that very, very few of us will do. But some people will be in a situation where they do that. You may have to defend yourself against the triple C factor. That's crisis-created criminals. The kind of person that he wouldn't normally mug you and try to take your bag, but in a situation where he has no food and water and you do, he might try to take it from you. And there's a myriad of different scenarios you could go through, but a part of selecting the firearm is you have to take into consideration, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think you're going to need to do? And you've got to take a very long, hard look at that and really evaluate your situation and not allow that evaluation to be influenced by Mad Max movies. And remember, everyone, please, that people live in different places. In the part of the country in which we reside, we've had windstorms and rainstorms and so forth that have knocked out the power for days. But the last time we had something you could really call a hurricane was, if I'm informed correctly, 1962. As we're in Florida, from what I read, this year is shaping up to be possibly the worst hurricane season ever. People live in different places with different concerns. And you have to be concerned with, what do you think is going to happen to you in the area in which you reside? Okay, with that in mind, there's still a couple more things. And the very big one is that in talking about what gun to put in your pack, we're talking about our opinions. Now, our opinions come from decades of shooting and hunting and being in the woods, from a career in the military, a career in law enforcement, from being in third world countries during times of crisis, to doing search and rescue right here in the United States. We have a lot of experience in this, but everything we're talking about are just our opinions, and I make no claim that my opinion has its origin in the mind of greatness. And finally, remember that we'll call it a top 5. It's going to be in no particular order. So, let's take a look at the top 5.
And now, the top 5.
Now, some people would ask the question, if they have an everyday carry gun, why would they need an additional gun in their bag? Okay, for people who have a concealed handgun license or live in a jurisdiction where they don't need one, and people who really do carry a handgun on their person every day, they won't necessarily need an additional one in their pack. So number 1 on our list is not a gun, but gun accessories to enhance your EDC. For example, if your EDC is this Beretta 92 FS 9mm and you've got a 15-shot magazine in your pack you'll want to have extra ammunition, but that ammo stored in something like this 30-shot magazine. Now, this will inhibit your ability to conceal the handgun, but in our crisis, we're going to say that won't be a big concern. And this will still allow you to do small game hunting or whatever, but if you're by yourself and have to deal with a group of crisis-created criminals, what we'll call triple Cs, this can be a real enhancement.
And they even make enhancements for this LCP2 Ruger 380 to include a 32-round Snell drum magazine. This really enhances your firearm compared to the normal 6. So, if you want to carry something little like this, there you go.
There's almost no limitations to what you can carry that will enhance your EDC. For example, let's say your EDC is something like this Dan Wesson 357 Magnum with a 2.5-inch barrel, and you're carrying it in a shoulder holster. Okay, again, In the crisis, we're going to say that concealment is not a problem, so in your bag you just have a nice belt holster. Makes it easier to get to, easier to carry. But not just the holster, you've also brought the barrel tool and the 8-inch barrel. Changing out this barrel takes a couple of minutes, but it's pretty easy to do. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to say, well, wait a minute. You've got all this crisis going on. How are you going to take the time before you start your 27-mile trek? The first thing you have to do is open your pack and start taking stuff out of it. Take the compass out of your pack and put it in your pocket, things like that. So before you do anything, you'll take the barrel off this gun and install the new barrel. Now, what if they charge me while I'm changing barrels? Well, you can shoot it with no barrel. I think that would be supremely loud.
You might burn them as much.
That would be quite a fireball, and probably not much accuracy.
And keep in mind while he does this, that you're also going to, get the clothes for your trip, right? You're going to change your shoes if you're having to wear dress shoes at work, etc. And they make kits that turn your EDC handgun into a pistol caliber carbine. Most of them are in a bullpup type design, so I don't own one because I'm left-handed, or I shoot rifles left-handed especially. But they 16-inch barrels go right onto, I know they make them for Glocks and SIGs and Berettas and other things. And then you put that 16-inch barrel now handgun into the stock. You put a 30-round magazine or bigger into it, and now you have a rifle that is small enough to carry concealed. You keep those accessories, enhancements in your pack all the time, and you're ready to go.
And now what you've got is something that has added a lot of power. With a longer sighting plane, it's going to help most of us be able to shoot the gun more accurately. Concealment is not a concern, and this can be a very useful 3-day emergency kind of gun. Now let's take a look at number 2 on our list. Number 2 on the list is a pistol and caliber 22 long rifle, but not just any pistol. One that mimics as close as you can its larger counterpart. For example, here's a Smith & Wesson M&P 22. Now it's a lot lighter than the 9mm version and has a 10-shot magazine, but its disassembly, reassembly, and manual of arms are virtually identical. And there's many guns in this category. You've all seen my Beretta M922, which is virtually identical to the Beretta 92FS 9mm. Really good example is the Glock Model 44 and caliber 22 long rifle, which is extremely similar to the Glock 19 9mm. Now, one of my favorites, here is this Browning 1911 22, caliber 22 long rifle with a 10-shot magazine. Now, it is a little smaller and a lot lighter than my Colt Gold Cup in caliber 45 ACP. But its disassembly, reassembly, manual of arms are exactly the same. And when you're talking about the difference between 22 and 45, if you did have to do some subsistence hunting, you could shoot a squirrel with a 22 long rifle, and you'd be okay. If you tried to shoot a squirrel with a 45 ACP, especially since mine is typically loaded with Hornady Critical Defense 185 grain FDX projectiles, you might not be able to salvage too much. And remember program compliance, everything being small and light. This box holds 20 rounds of 45 ACP. This box holds 50 rounds of 22 long rifle. Next on our list is something that would be thought of as a standalone gun in the pack, not something to enhance your everyday carry. And it's going to be a handgun in caliber 22 long rifle that does not try to mimic its larger counterpart. A myriad of different guns that could fill this niche. I want to show you just a few of them. Remember, in the pack like this, budget is a concern, space and weight are concerns, what you think you're going to need to do with the firearm are concerns. Now, this is a Ruger Wrangler. It's a single-action revolver, cock the hammer, pull the trigger, caliber 22 long rifle, 6-shot cylinder. And the way this loads is, you open the loading gate, that freewheels the cylinder, load in one, rotate, load in one, snap it shut, lock it, shoot it. When you go to reload, open the loading gate, eject a rod, eject one, eject one, eject one, and so forth. Slow to load, slow to shoot, slow to reload. However, a lot of people can shoot those accurately, and they can be bought quite often for less than $200. While by contrast, this Ruger Bearcat, which is a very similar firearm, open the loading gate. This one you half-cock to freewheel the cylinder. Same ejection, same load one at a time. Handguns like that typically cost over $400. There's a big difference in price, and one would be possibly out of the budget, especially for a gun that's going to spend its whole life in your pack. Now, what if you're thinking that you might need this for personal protection purposes? Guns like this are a whole lot better than nothing, but they can leave you a little short. As where something like this Ruger Mark III 22 long rifle autoloader with a 10-shot magazine and the ability to reload very quickly might give you a big advantage. Number 4 on our list is a carbine, but not just any carbine, one that has specific features, and there's lots of them out there. I brought as an example this LC carbine, and it has to have features like a collapsible stock, and it has to have a short barrel, and it should have the ability to disassemble and reassemble quickly so it can fit in your pack. It also has to have the feature of the same magazines and be the same caliber as your EDC pistol. Of course, this one I would only recommend if your EDC pistol is a Ruger 5.7, but there's many different PCCs out there that will use the same magazines as many different handguns. Now, this one they call a light carry carbine. It actually feels pretty heavy to me, and things like this can take up a lot of space in your pack, so they absolutely would not be for everybody. But for some people in some situations, something like this could be useful. But remember, only if it has the ability to be small and uses the same magazines and ammunition as your handgun. And number 5 on our list is any small rifle or shotgun that can easily be disassembled and put in the pack. And I want to show you 2 rifles, both in caliber 22 long rifle. First, the 1022 Takedown. Comes in this nice bag. To put it together is very easy. And there you go. When you buy it, it comes with one 10-shot magazine. Aftermarket 25-shot magazines are readily available. It's light, it's relatively inexpensive, and it's easy to take apart and put back in your pack. Now, another one that's very interesting is the Henry U.S. Survival Model Hotel 002 Bravo. You buy it, and it comes in this cool little cardboard box. Pull it out, and, well, it looks like they only gave us part of the gun. This disassembles and goes inside the stock. Now, many of you will know this as an AR-7 survival rifle, but Henry's calling it, stamped right on here, Model Hotel 002 Bravo. An auto-loading 22 comes with 2 8-shot magazines. And what you do is, you take your receiver and you just screw it onto your stock. And your barrel has a little peg that shows you exactly where it needs to go. And you screw it down. And it just has to be finger tight. One of your magazines can go in the mag well. The other magazine can go back in the stock, and they go in a very specific way. Put the end cap back on, and there you go. Now, there's a little bit of a story behind rifles like this. Sources don't always agree with each other, but as far as I can tell, this basic rifle was introduced in 1958, and they've been made off and on since then. And it's very light. It weighs 3.5 pounds, very convenient. It's 22 long rifle. They've been known to shoot pretty accurately, However, a couple of different companies made them. They were always made very cheaply with poor quality control. And for the entirety of my life, I have met a lot of people who owned one or at least had had the opportunity to fire one. And everyone, without exception, that I have ever met tells me that when you fire this, it is grossly unreliable. Can't even get through the whole 8-shot magazine without a malfunction. I had the opportunity to shoot one many years ago, and that's exactly what I found to be the case. Cool gun, accurate, grossly unreliable. And the question has come up, now that Henry has been making these for a few years, have they improved the quality control? And the answer is, if you want to know the answer to that, you have to watch the long version of this presentation.